Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, and you're on Global Business News TV. And this unit of broadcast with my partner, Ken Somers. Hello, Ken.
Good afternoon, Ed. How are you?
Just great. 7 a.m. here in California. You know, daylight savings time should continue all year, but right now it's just getting light in San Diego here. So it's a little weird. Another week, it'll be bright and sunny at this hour, but dark at 4 p.m. So craziness is coming. Okay, so Ken Somers, you're an expert, recognized expert in senior corporate management of talent and all things related. And your special guest today is Marc Kroll. Why don't you do the honors?
It would be my pleasure. And I should hasten to add that I said good afternoon because I figured by the time people see this, they'll be looking at it a more reasonable hour of the day. So,
well, it's already 7:30 dinner time in India.
There you go. But it is indeed my pleasure to welcome and introduce Marc Kroll. Marc is a good friend. He is the leader of his own consulting practice called Comp 360. Marc has had a long and very prosperous career in the private sector, and now has his own business. And I will tell you, Marc is one of and I'm sure will come through in the course of our discussion, Marc is one of the more thoughtful and reflective compensation gurus that I've had the pleasure of knowing. And largely because even though he's a subject matter expert in the technical area of compensation, he thinks big picture. He thinks, how does comp fit into the broader human resources agenda? And beyond that, the broader business agenda. So it truly is a pleasure to introduce Marc. And welcome to the show, Marc.
Good morning, Ed, and good morning, Ken. And it's 10 o'clock in Connecticut, and the sun is up. And I've been up on my second cup of coffee right now.
Oh, I've only had one myself.
Yeah, so. And we are experiencing a very wet fall. As a matter of fact, probably Friday and into Saturday, we will have at least another inch or two of rain. And that's to augment the amount of rain we had at the beginning of the week, which is about 3 inches. So, hallelujah. My mother is complaining at me in terms of why you have so much rain and I have no rain. She's in Arizona, in California. I know that you guys had some rain out there, so it's not as bad as it once was.
Yeah, people were out celebrating. So, well, I'm actually a proponent of building a pipeline from the Gulf states, I guess from Connecticut too now, and bring all that water out here because water will become the new oil. People will pay a lot of money to have water.
I have been hearing dire predictions about water. Yeah, in your neck of the woods, absolutely. Arizona, Colorado are fighting about the Colorado River right now, and they're going to continue to fight until something happens. And yes, I've heard about that pipeline. It brings oil. It should start bringing water also. So.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you know what?
Yep.
Up the road here, about 20 miles, is a little town called Carlsbad, and there's a desalination plant that's been operating about a year. And I was just reading about it in the New York Times this morning, and because it's the answer. Because they're doing it in Saudi Arabia, they're doing it in Israel, they're doing it even in Algeria. And the cost, so there's a private company that's Israeli backed, who's partnering with the San Diego Water Authority. And so it's working. So it's charging, this is just for an aside here for a second, $5 a month per household in order to use the water from the company that's called Poseidon, like the submarine, the movie. So it's working. And now they're going to start building a plant, similar water plant in Huntington Beach. That will, not because of the oil spill there, but because of there's a lot of water out there in the ocean, and it's right there.
When we have time, which we don't, I will tell you about the time I worked for Ciba Geigy, who sells desalination chemicals. Well, not desalination chemicals, but desalination chemicals to aid in that process.
Interesting, isn't it?
End of story right now, because we've got better things to do.
Yeah, okay, Ken.
Mark, I know. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today was actually the emergence of geographic differentials that have arisen out of COVID, and I'm wondering, keying off the discussion about water, maybe in California and Colorado and Arizona, we should start paying people in water in dollars. But
well, that's one way.
Manifestation of geographic differentials.
That's a new definition, Ken. We've just coined a new definition of total rewards. In terms of what compensation is, or what total rewards is and is not. Like you said, my definition of it is, when you're working for a job, you have extrinsic rewards, which is money and benefits, etc. But you also have intrinsic rewards, which is about the place you work at, the people you work with, the culture you're in, and also, and probably the most important, is the relationship with your boss, which I think is, people don't take that as compensation, but really, people stay on the job. I think compensation and total rewards is a satisfier. It's not a motivator, it's a satisfier. When you get up and work every day, you want to come to work, and that's really in itself what it's all about.
So that's another topic called feedback between people and their direct boss, right? And because that's a ticket to ride. If you have a good relationship.
But I've been working in the nonprofit business for a while. One of my practices is the nonprofit business, and those people, let's be honest, those people don't get paid, tip top as they do for profit. It's about what they're doing and how they're doing it in terms of the charitability and the mission that they have. They enjoy it. They come to work every day to do good. They're do-gooders. And that in itself is a reward. I'm working right now with the Harker Foundation for Public Giving, a large community foundation, and we're doing a study for their executive compensation, in terms of how well should these folks get paid, because they're managing an organization that has about $1 billion in assets, and how they spend their money, how they invest their money is very important. But they're also, the ground is kind of shifting underneath their feet right now, in terms of revenue streams being a challenge to increase and generate, and they have to start managing and being more accountable to the clients and also to the donors. So they're kind of caught in this vice, if you will, in terms of trying to do the right thing. And it's becoming even more of a challenge nowadays with the pandemic. So basically, we're looking at all options in terms of how much we should comp these people, but also how do we comp these people? The concept of incentive in a nonprofit organization, their minds are kind of opening to that. And a lot of foundations are looking at that also, not just for executives, but also for people, professional staff in terms of how to keep these people motivated and retained. When you have 10 million job openings in the country, people's ears perk up. and they start thinking about, well, how are we going to retain our workforce? And if somebody does leave, oh my God, it's going to cost how much money in person time to get that job refilled again? It's going to cost right now. I think there were estimates before the pandemic, Ken, maybe you can tell me, in terms of it was over $100,000 to refill a job. It probably now is at least 150, 200, I would believe, I would think.
Yeah, and the data would suggest, in fact, McKinsey just recently released some data on this. And in fact, obviously it depends on the rank and complexity of any individual role, but at a minimum, it looks like the cost of turnover is at least 30% of the compensation for a lower level job, and can be as high as 150% for more senior positions. But Mark, since we're into the nonprofit dimension of this discussion,
I jumped to the third subject, and we didn't talk about the first subject.
No, we're having a conversation. So, we'll go where we need to go. But since we're on nonprofits, and you alluded to the fact that nonprofits and not-for-profits are experiencing challenges that they hadn't historically, could you tell us a little bit more about your experience in terms of, the pressure for accountability, and maybe a little more on what you're seeing in terms of the development of incentives in the nonprofit world?
Well, the thing is, the concept of revenue streams for these folks is very important in terms of how they can maximize their endowments, and how they can maximize and squeeze every piece of value out of their dollars that are going out the door. Let's remember that Harvard Foundation for Public Giving has over $1 billion asset base. They spend, it throws off about 50, possibly $60 million a year in grants. And that's where they have to be very, very, very good at managing their clients in terms of how they're going to spend that money, etc. Right now, I think their challenge and their mission is things are shifting into equity and a lot of the other stuff around racial equity and helping and augmenting the various poverty programs in the Hartford metro area, which is about 10 or 13 towns around the area. So basically, they have to make sure that their clients are spending the money correctly and hold them accountable, because what they're doing is they're grant makers. They work with various frontline and street community service organizations that are out in that area. And they have to work with them very closely in terms of how that money is getting distributed and spent to the various areas, whether it be the elderly, whether it be kids, whether it be etc. So again, they have their own level of business acumen that they have to deal with. And in terms of comping these people, I've worked with them both about 8 years ago in terms of building them a base salary program, which is very, very competitive with not just community foundations, but with private foundations. Again, the answer is, who do we compete with for labor? Do we compete with community foundations, which are a little bit less wealthy, as opposed to the Ford Foundation and as opposed to a lot of these other foundations that were started by families, traditional families, and have almost, $10 billion in assets, like the Gates Foundation, etc. So in terms of paying people, and I've done a lot of IRS Form 990 research, and some of the salaries that are getting paid to CEOs at these large foundations are pretty hefty. Pretty
So,
hefty, let's
Mark,
put it that way.
given all of that, and I'm going to try to marry a couple of topics here.
Yep.
Are you seeing a greater focus on incentives to drive accountability in the nonprofit world?
Yeah.
And if you would transition us to the discussion about labor market competitors and how it's showing up in the nonprofit world, and also in your for-profit clients.
Well, in the nonprofit world, like I said, try to maximize the revenue coming in from donors, try to take that money and squeeze every inch of value out of it. And the idea of holding people accountable with an incentive program is pretty, well, it's a traditional and old concept. It's been around for a while, but it hasn't been around in the nonprofit industry. Now, with the idea of government sources and government funds drying up, it's ever so more important for a lot of the foundation money to be spent in a very, very, very efficient and productive way. So right now, we're looking at the executives for Hartford Foundation for Public Giving in terms of holding them accountable and objectives, right on down the line, the president and his senior leadership team.
May I jump in and ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Who funds these nonprofits? Is it not just a couple of rich families that are looking for a 501c3 thing, but it's become popular. ESG, I think, is what the slogan is, a do-gooder thing, and companies are getting mileage out of it because they want to have their brand associated with helping something happen out there in the community. And it's also a way of finding talent to do specific things. So to that extent, and thinking of public television, which I watch a lot, they have advertising now because Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was the government entity for funding, has gone away almost totally. So that means, okay, go sell ads, and in addition to their own fundraising campaigns. So this Hartford Community Foundation, to which you're referring, this is a corporation apparently set up totally legally, and companies can participate, they can send money, they could find co-sponsors, I guess, in order to fund what's going on. So this is a boardroom thing. It's not a line thing. I mean, right? This is top down, and what you guys are talking about right now, and I'm learning about from you right now, and therefore our audience is learning from you right now, is that this is really big business. This is not an afterthought.
Well, I think it is and it is not.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is in the fact that, Hartford Foundation for Public Giving is a quote unquote community foundation. What is that? It is an organization that was started by a business entity. Okay. In this case, it was a large bank in Hartford, Shamut Bank, I think it was. And basically, they didn't want to get into the nonprofit business. So what they did was they started a community foundation under a totally separate entity, 501c3, and they said we're not getting involved in it, but we're gonna provide the seed money and get that up and running, and we're going to have a board, We're going to have a senior leadership team, and we're going to have staff to run that as grant makers. Now, that's one thing. The other entity can be a corporate entity like the Carnegie Corporation, where Andrew Carnegie, say what you will about them, but they're one of the biggest private nonprofits, foundations, etc. That is not a community foundation. Okay, that is a corporate foundation in the fact that we are a corporation, but we spend a lot of our money on doing good, etc. The tax treatment, I'm not sure what it is. I'm not an accountant at this point. The last one is a private foundation. I'm a family. Bill Gates. Name a couple. I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Elon Musk is going to create something down the road also. So, but that is a private family foundation where families want to put together. The Rockefeller Foundation, in terms of that, Rockefellers have two foundations. One is the Rockefeller Foundation, the other one is the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. The David and Nelson and the third one, I forget his name, got together and said, we're going to start our own. And they did. And basically they're about 850 million in assets. So again, I think it depends on the entity. The community foundations are a bit more controlled in their approach in corporate in terms of that. With private foundations, it's all about the family in terms of what the family members are going to do. Probably all the family members are on the board, and they call the shots. As far as the community foundation is concerned, there are members there are business people on the board. There are people from community entities that take money from them. They got to be careful with the conflict of interest. But again, I think there are different angles and different foundations to do different things.
Yeah. So now it's becoming really popular, as we've already discussed, as a funnel, as a way that companies can associate their brand rather than just throw money at something. They can get involved professionally through what you're talking about. Because I'm thinking of Bloomberg, he's done that for 50 years.
Right.
He's got multiple foundations. Hi, this is Ed, and I thank you for tuning in to Global TV Talk Show, a unit on globalbusinessnews.net. We broadcast to the world, as you know by now. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that our programs are advertising supported. We're grateful for co-sponsors, advertisers. They have a marketing budget coupled with a strong desire to be associated with our top quality program. And of course, I'm grateful. Thank you. So for the next few minutes, you're going to see some commercials. It's mostly very low key, and our prices are very, very reasonable. Our exposure for the advertisers go 12 months and beyond. Some of our advertisers have been with us since April of 2020. And Google Analytics has tracked over 125,000 what they call audience page views, which means you looking at this page, that's a page view. Now, if you happen to go to one of our other shows or to our radio broadcasts or to our newspaper or magazine, those become additional page views as measured by Google Analytics. And so when they say 125,000 since spring of 2020 up through Labor Day, a month ago, that's pretty good numbers. And the past 30 days, Google Analytics has measured just under 6,000 audience page views. And that, according to them, is a 42% increase in audience participation over the month of August. So thank you very much. Well, here's our advertisers, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so, and we'll proceed with this interesting conversation. Thank you.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we are researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
This is really interesting, but so foundations and nonprofits are on the one hand doing good out there and hiring certainly hiring business people, but also hiring a certain type, almost like Peace Corps people. That's what I see developing here. There's a new Peace Corps developing.
Most of the people that are on foundation staff are former community, headed up former community or worked in former community service organizations. So they have a real understanding of what the heck is going on the front line. So they use those folks as reviewers and auditors in terms of this grant that comes in. Yes, it's pretty legitimate. Let's go ahead and apportion money for it, etc. So again, I think the promotional, in terms of the promotional track, you have community people who get their scars and get their experience out on the front line, and if they're lucky, they get hired by a foundation to do even better work with a bigger magnitude, etc. So that's kind of a career trap. Now, what I'm getting back to is this whole concept of geographic differential. Let me step back and say, in the old days, it used to be real easy. And I'm not just talking about before the pandemic. I'm talking about maybe 10 or 15 years ago. It was a national market for executives and people and professional staff, believe it or not. And the only folks that got paid locally were non-exempt administrative and clerical staff. That was the old days, and if you worked in the hospital industry, or if you worked in IT, then you get paid by the industry, etc. So it was very, very simple. Fast forward to today, nothing is simple, and it was not simple before the pandemic because there were a lot of industries that were changing and moving people around internationally and domestically, etc. And now the pandemic has even complicated more of that. I was talking to Ken. We were talking about the other day about how this challenge of working virtually, in terms of if I'm working for a company who's in Silicon Valley, but I live in Texas, well, that company has a choice. Do I pay that person Texas wages, or do I pay them in Silicon Valley? Or do I pay them something else in terms of a national rate? So companies right now are dealing with these people who are working virtually in a different cost of labor area and companies are asking themselves, should we pay geographic differentials, or should we just leave well enough alone, and then anybody coming in the door after a certain date will get paid according to their geography. So again, companies are balancing this. Add to the point that, I'll repeat myself, there's 9 to 10 million job openings, and a lot of them are in technical and professional staff also. What do companies do when they say, okay, we're going to pay you, for the geography you're in? And most IT people will just say, hail and farewell. I'm going, and I'm looking for, somebody who can pay me the best I can be paid. So basically, you've got this balance that companies are thinking about now and saying. Now, a lot of companies, some companies after the pandemic have gone to geographic differentials, and they've some of them have paid the price. And I've spoken with a couple of potential clients in terms of that. But people are really thinking now and head scratching and wondering, well, we've got this issue. It really is. It's a seller's market. It's an absolute seller's market right now.
Yeah, the
So
war for
do I really
talent
wanna-
has been won by talent.
Yeah, and the thing is, do I really want to piss my employees off in any way? Especially around, if you mess with somebody's compensation, you're really asking for it. So you got to be very careful in terms of this whole idea of geographic differentials. And I think you
So then-
also have to
Yeah.
have an orientation and an assimilation strategy over time to deal with that. Understand the labor cost, etc. But the labor cost is one piece of the pie in terms of getting a workforce that has high talent, has high productivity, and wants to come to work every day. So
Mark,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So Mark, knowing that we don't have a lot of time left to us this morning, and clearly there's enough meat here for a follow-on discussion, I think. But let me play devil's advocate. I am the head of HR for a major Silicon Valley firm, and because of COVID, my management team has decided to let people work remotely indefinitely. As an employee, I decide, I'm the head of HR of this Silicon Valley firm now. I decide I'm going to move to Missouri because I have family in Missouri, and with broadband, I have no trouble doing my job from Missouri. Cost of living in Missouri is very different than it is in Silicon Valley. Why shouldn't I adjust my pay for the market?
that's a leadership team discussion, isn't it?
It is, but you're my comp consultant. Tell me what.
In terms of the leadership team has to ask themselves that question. Do we want, and how do we want to deal with this? Not just our CHRO, but everybody, professional staff, our IT, especially IT people. IT people, their work lends itself to working virtually, of course. To be honest with you, my wife has worked virtually for 35 or 40 years, for most of her career. She worked for a database management company, and they let her work at home every day. And but again, this idea of the geographic differential: are we at a market disadvantage if we start to do this with other competitors? Are we going to lose people to other competitors? What is the cost benefit? Set up a cost benefit model and start doing your research before you make any decision, not just for the CHRO, although I know politics, politics. So yeah, that's a question that to be had. But again, I think the cost benefit, there has to be a cost benefit done for each of these companies if we're going to a geographic differential in terms of what type of business are we in and how we're going to do that. It's not just about the CHRO, it's about the whole entire staff and how that's going to look in terms of, if we do go to geographic differentials, what's the turnover rate going to be? What do we think the turnover rate is going to be? Maybe doing some employee focus groups online, and maybe doing some employee surveys online in terms of how does this work? Or what do you have, what's your work schedule, and how would you like to work going forward?
So we have about 10 minutes left. So my background and connection still is mobile talent. And, with the pandemic knocking out relocations, it's starting to come back. But what's happened is people working from anywhere. And so the issue has come up on an international basis about tax. What tax? What compliance issues are there? And that's become a major sticking point in high levels in companies with an international staff. And they're deciding, do we really want to send people on assignment when they can work on Zoom? And to what extent are we going to help them with tax liability?
But Mark, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in on that one.
Go right ahead, my friend. I've done a little bit with Ciba Geigy, but that was about 25 years ago. Things have changed, I think.
So having been an expatriate myself in 6 different countries, I feel as though I have an opinion on this that I'd like to share. So first of all, the landscape is evolving very rapidly. When my very first expatriate assignment was a classic expatriate package where, I was provided housing, I was provided a cost of living allowance, et cetera, very traditional expatriate package. And from a tax point of view, Ed, to address your question, it was a concept known as tax equalization. And the way, in layperson's terms, the way tax equalization works is the accounting firm that supports the business will run 2 calculations. Calculation 1 is, what would my taxes have been if I had stayed at home and earned my home country income? The second calculation is, what were the actual taxes, considering not only what my liabilities were in the United States, but what tax liabilities the corporation incurred as a consequence of posting me to Singapore, which was a real example. Generally speaking, the way tax equalization worked was I was responsible for my stay-at-home portion, and the company paid the delta. It was all income to me. So what that meant was, even though the company paid the taxes on my behalf, it was considered income to me, which meant that the company then had to gross up the tax payment. So it's very, very costly to have a tax equalization policy. What I'm seeing now, and I have family friends who are going through this actually as we speak, that companies are increasingly saying, going to Singapore is a great developmental opportunity for you too. Therefore, we're going to pay you a very competitive package, but it's going to be on local terms. And you are responsible for paying your taxes. You are responsible for finding and paying for your housing, et cetera, et cetera. So the world is shifting dramatically. We could have a whole conversation just about expatriation and what's going on.
Wow.
Good. Let's do it someday.
Yeah, I think, I'll give you by comparison, 20 to 25 years ago, it was pretty formulaic and standard. And Ciba, the Swiss are known for their conservatism. And basically, the corporate center in Basel said, this is what it is. And they implemented it. And when there was complaints, they just ignored them and they didn't change them. But the thing is, the rate of change now in the global marketplace is lightning. So companies have to react a lot quicker than in my day, and basically, I was on video conference with my counterpart in Basel in terms of arguing, etc., especially people going back and forth from Basel to Westchester. I'll leave it at that.
So Ed, I'm gonna move us to wrap up time. I think one of the things I said when we introduced Mark was that not only is he a great subject matter expert in the technical dimensions of compensation, but he also thinks more broadly about how comp fits into HR strategies and the business implications. And I'd like to believe that this conversation demonstrated the truth of that statement. Mark truly is a big picture thinker. I'd love to continue this another time where we can talk some more. Mark obviously has a lot of passion around the not-for-profit world. And Ed, if you're agreeable, we'll do a follow-up sometime.
How about 30 days from now?
I like that. I like that. In between the holidays, that's fine with me. That would be good.
Sometime in the second week in December might be good.
Great.
Cool.
Great. We can talk. By then, I'll have a couple of other clients under my belt, and I can talk a little bit more about for-profit organizations also in terms
of fascinating conversation. That's so timely.
Yeah, what they're experiencing. I think it's, money is always, they say money is the root of all evil. Well, money is and is not. It's about what goes on, behind the money or above it or below it.
Or behind the curtain.
So from a marketing point of view, if I can just jump in here, and we're on live, just keep that in mind. Who do you want me to target the marketing of this particular show today? Where do you want me to send this thing to benefit you most, Mark?
HR, the HR communities. Senior.
Not a problem.
I'm sorry?
Consider it done.
Okay. Yeah. If I can get into CHROs or, small to mid-sized companies don't have big HR presence, but the CEO and the investors, are in the middle and are in the process of trying to formalize if they're successful, and their growth is successful. They reach a point where they say, wait a minute, we're not making as much money as we should. We've got to put some infrastructure in. It starts with the finance infrastructure in terms of financial reporting. And then we start talking about talent and people in terms of, what type of HR strategy, ergo salary and benefits and total reward strategy, are we going to adopt over the long term to keep this growth going?
Thank you, Mark.
So we'll add CFOs to the list.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has really been an honor. Marc Kroll.
All right. The pleasure was mine, Ed, and it's great to meet you. And I look forward to future conversations.
Count on it. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.